Is your Z Fold 8 Ultra actually hitting the charging speeds Samsung promises, or is a mismatched charger quietly slowing you down?
Samsung doesn't put a charger in the box, and not every 45 watts block on Amazon delivers 45 watts to this phone. We're not just ranking by wattage on the label, we're ranking by which chargers actually push real PPS power into the Fold 8 Ultra's charging curve. Stick around, because the one that wins this list surprised us. The first pick on this list does the job, but it makes you work for it a little. The Anker 313 charger, ACE 45 watts, is a single USB-C port charger built around Anker's GAN chipset, with a foldable plug that shrinks it down for a bag or a jacket pocket. On paper, the output is exactly what the Fold 8 Ultra wants. PPS across a 3.3 to 21 volt range, topping out at 45 watts, plus standard PD profiles underneath it for anything that isn't a Samsung phone. Anker's own listing confirms it's built to trigger Samsung's super fast charging protocol specifically, not just generic power delivery. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. A charger can print 45 watts on the box and still never speak the exact PPS handshake this phone's charging controller is listening for, which means it defaults down to a slower, generic PD profile without ever telling you. Here's the catch. No cable is included. At all. You're buying a brick, and the Fold 8 Ultra needs a 5 amp rated USB-C to USB-C cable to actually pull 45 watts through it. A cheap 3 amp cable you already have in a drawer will bottleneck this charger down to a fraction of its rated speed, and there's no warning light or error message telling you why your phone is charging slower than it should. If you already own a proper 5 amp cable, the kind that ships with newer laptops or higher-end phones, this is a non-issue and you get a genuinely small, dependable brick out of it. If you don't own one, you need to price that cable in as part of the real cost of this pick, not treat it as optional. The verdict? This is a genuinely competent single-port charger for someone who already has the right cable sitting in a drawer and just wants a small, reliable brick for a bag, a desk, or a nightstand. It's not the one to buy if you're starting completely from zero and need everything solved in one box, because you'll be back on Amazon within the week buying a cable separately. If having zero accessories in the box is the sticking point, the next option at least gives you a second port to work with, even if it comes with its own trade-off. The UGREEN Nexode 45-watt 2-port GAN charger solves the single-port limitation outright. It's a foldable plug GAN charger with both PD and PPS support, and when you're only using one of its 2 USB-C ports, it delivers the full 45 watts, enough to trigger super fast charging 2.0 on the Fold 8 Ultra, exactly the way Samsung's own charger would. Use both ports at once though, and UGREEN's own spec sheet is upfront about the trade-off. The power splits down to 25 watts on one port and 20 watts on the other. That's plenty to top off a smartwatch or a set of earbuds, but don't expect to fast charge 2 phones simultaneously at full speed off this one block. The physics of GAN power sharing just doesn't allow it. UGREEN backs this with thermal guard protection, real-time temperature monitoring layered on top of the standard overvoltage and overcurrent safeguards, which matters more than it sounds for a compact GAN brick that's going to sit plugged into a wall and running warm for close to an hour at a stretch, charging a 5,000 mAh silicon carbon battery that runs hotter under sustained fast charge loads than older lithium-ion cells did. The catch here is the same one we just flagged on the Anker pick, and it's worth repeating because it trips people up constantly across this entire category. No cable is confirmed included in this listing. You're again on the hook for sourcing a proper 5 amp USB-C cable separately, or you're capping your charge speed without ever realizing it's happening. Where this one pulls ahead of the Anker pick is flexibility. That second port is genuinely useful if you're already juggling a Galaxy Watch charger or a pair of buds on the same outlet as your phone. Where it still falls short of a true daily driver pick is that same missing cable, plus the reality that dual-port use throttles your fast charging exactly when you'd want it most, a hotel room with one outlet and 2 devices both dying at the same time. Now here's where the list shifts. The next 3 picks all solve the cable problem for you by bundling one in the box, and that changes the math on value considerably. But it also means we need to look closer at exactly what you're getting for that convenience,
because not all of these come from brands with a track record.
The 45-watt PD/PPS 2-pack with 10-foot cables is the budget tier entry on this list, and it earns that label honestly, in both directions. This is a white label charger, no major brand name attached, just a generic block sold under a Samsung compatibility-focused title. What you do get, on paper, is real PD 3.0 and PPS support rated to 45 watts, and two 10-foot braided USB-C to USB-C cables in the box, which solves the exact problem the first two chargers on this list left unsolved. 10 feet is genuinely useful in ways a standard 3-foot cable isn't, charging from a nightstand outlet across the room, running a cable from a car's backseat charging port, or keeping your phone usable while it charges instead of tethering you to a wall. The honest catch is that the seller's own charging speed claims, the specific percentage they say you'll hit in 30 minutes, comes straight from their own product listing, not from an independent test or a manufacturer spec sheet. That's marketing copy, not a verified number, and with no established brand behind it, there's no track record of PPS calibration or long-term reliability to lean on the way you can with Anker or UGREEN. You're trusting a listing, not a reputation, and that's a meaningfully different bet. For the price tier this sits in, it's a reasonable pick if you specifically need long cables and want a spare charger for a bag, a car, or a second room where speed isn't the top priority. It's not the one to buy if you want real confidence that the PPS handshake is dialed in precisely for a phone with a 5,000 mAh silicon carbon battery that's more sensitive to charge curve tuning than older Galaxy models running smaller lithium-ion packs. The next pick moves up meaningfully in build quality, but it also raises something you genuinely need to know before you click buy. The Samsung Superfast Charger 45-watt GAN charger with a 6.6-foot cable looks, at a glance, like it's Samsung's own product. The listing title says Samsung directly, front and center. It isn't. This is a third-party accessory using Samsung's device names and Samsung Superfast charging language in the title to signal compatibility, not a charger actually manufactured or sold by Samsung itself. That's worth knowing before you buy it, because it directly changes what warranty coverage and customer support you're actually getting if something goes wrong 6 months from now. Setting the naming issue aside, the spec sheet underneath is solid. GAN construction, PD and PPS support up to 45 watts, and a 6.6-foot cable included right in the box, so there's no separate cable purchase needed the way there was with the first two picks. GAN chips run measurably cooler than older silicon designs over a sustained charge cycle, which matters more on a battery this size than people give it credit for. The listing also documents standard protections against overvoltage, overcurrent, and short circuits, which is the baseline you'd want from any charger touching an expensive foldable. The catch, beyond the branding confusion, is that there's no independent testing behind the PPS calibration claims. You're relying entirely on a listing from a company without Anker or UGREEN's public track record or years of returns data to reference. For a Fold 8 Ultra, where Samsung's own dual-path charging architecture is tuned specifically for this exact battery chemistry, that's a real, if currently unverified, gap in confidence. The verdict: functionally capable and a strong value if the included cable is what you're after. But go in with your eyes open. This isn't a Samsung-made product, whatever the title on the listing suggests. Before we get to the top pick, one more thing worth flagging clearly. Neither of the final two chargers on this list is actually manufactured by Samsung either, despite what their titles imply. That's increasingly common across this entire product category on Amazon, and it's worth understanding exactly why the last one still edges out everything else above it. Taking the top spot is the Samsung 45-watt charger with a 6.6-foot 100-watt rated USB-C cable. Like the previous pick, Samsung appears in the title, but this is a third-party brand. Notably, the listing itself uses for Samsung phrasing, rather than claiming outright to be Samsung-made, which is at least more transparent framing than the last pick's naming choice. What actually earns this the top spot is the cable itself, a 6.6-foot cord rated all the way to 100 watts, with a built-in e-marker chip and USB 3.2 Gen 2 data speeds, alongside the power delivery. That e-marker chip matters specifically for PPS charging. It's what negotiates the higher current handshake with the Fold 8 Ultra's charging controller in the first place,
And a cable without one can silently cap your speed even when the charger block itself is rated correctly and doing its job.
The charger block matches that cable with PD and PPS support up to 45 watts, and the same standard protection suite you'd expect at this tier: overvoltage, overcurrent, overheating, and short-circuit safeguards all documented in the listing. The catch here is consistent with everything else on this list that sits below genuine first-party Samsung hardware. No independent lab has verified the PPS calibration, and you're trusting a manufacturer without a decade of charging hardware reputation behind it, the way Anker or UGREEN have built up over time. But between all 5 options on this list, this is the only one that pairs a fully rated E-marker cable with a 45-watt PPS-capable block in a single box, with no separate cable purchase required and no power-splitting compromise from a second port cutting into your charge speed. The verdict? If you want one single purchase that removes every variable at once, the cable, the wattage, and the protocol handshake, this is the pick that does it.